Let me say a few provocative words about this topic. I am not so sure how much they will pertain to what we are going to hear afterwards, because I did not have a chance to really discuss the contents of other colleagues' presentations here. But let me say for a few words about minorities in periods of transition. In any upheaval, minorities and varieties of groups that differ ethnically, confessionally, or in respect to values, lifestyles, and so on, they suffer more in any transition, anywhere. Upheavals that precede and usually continue unabated during periods of transition, and given, for example, the Eastern Europe, Latin America in the 70s, current situation in the MENA countries. Upheavals generally have a Hobbesian side to them. Upheavals bring out this homo hominem lupus aspect, in which the weak and the meek suffer most. We also learned yesterday that transitions do not necessarily lead to democracy. They can stall, they can reverse, and they conjure, as my friend Marwan said, they conjure renewed authoritarianism in response to chaos. That should not be surprising. Europe's recent case of transition may be the exception rather than the rule. Western Europe presented a model of stability and prosperity to which other European states and peoples aspired, as Senan Florenza said in the Spanish case, the previous session. But historically, this has not been really true. The search for stability, historically, has overridden the search for freedom. It goes all the way back to Plato, who equated democracy with chaos leading to anarchy. The famous ship metaphor of Plato for democracy, that everybody is doing something different on a ship, and everybody is taking part in the steering of the ship except the captain, who might know something about it. That was Plato's notion of democracy. Machiavelli, the great preceder of modern political thought, emphasized stability and leadership. I mean, his notion of virtu was not virtue as we understand today, but virtu meant the ability to apply power to ensure stability. Hobbes's social contract basically, again, was a search for stability at a time Europe was really at a period of 30 years war. And Hobbes basically said, well, in order to gain protection, you have to cede your sovereignty to a sovereign. Luther emphasized the faith of the individual, but also emphasized the importance of obeying the ruler, because Northern Europe, still in that time of Reformation, did not want any more instability. And that is reflected also in the Enlightenment. Kant said, question but obey. And that is Kant's famous short essay on what is enlightenment. The quest for freedom is basically a 19th century quest that goes hand in hand with romanticism. But then the three quests there, nationalism, Marxism, socialism, and then ultimately Bakunin's anarchism, all dissolved in excesses. So in our time, I think democracy cannot be explained solely in terms of participation. We draw from historical examples. Rather, it's institutions that ensure sustainable democracy, institutions that are not subject to political or electoral interference, but institutions that are constitutionally defined and constitutionally protected. Hence, an important factor is checks and balances. It is therefore difficult to achieve stable democracy where there are no stable and strong institutions. Hence, democracy and weak state do not go hand in hand. Weak states are quarrelsome ones. They elicit a nostalgia for authority, again, as you said. Two further points I want to make. One is a nostalgia for communitarian living under empire that preceded the modern state. Nostalgia for that empire meant a living under coexistence. It is true, for example, and I beg your pardon for bringing an Ottoman example, but people are often refer back, those who know Ottoman history, I do not mean politicians, refer back to how different confessional and ethnic groups coexisted, each in its own neighborhood or village. That was coexistence and not cosmopolitanism. We tend to forget that. Also, there were subjects regulated by the ruling estates, which represented the state. That kind of isolated existence, that kind of isolation within which each community is free in its own way, is no longer possible or desirable. Coexistence is different from integration. Hence, the clash of normative values, normative codes, in the absence of an impersonal system of law and constitutional protection that we are seeing in many parts of the neighborhood. My second point, the question of social structure is important in our considerations. No political system can endure if it is in stark opposition to the prevailing social structure. Those communities, individualistic societies, rather, tend to do better in overcoming ethnic and religious divides in society because voluntary association plays a more prominent role in individualistic societies. For the same reason, civil society tends to be stronger in individualistic societies because civil society essentially depends on voluntary associations and provides for their effectiveness. More collectivist societies face difficulties in overcoming divisions along ethnic or confessional or value lines. Defensive fragmentation is a more likely feature in the face of instability and political change. That is because collectivist societies are either segmented, hence fragmented, or divided along values, with the result, in either case, they tend to be particularistic. Equilibrium in status quo allows for coexistence, but challenge to the political system within the borders of a state tends to put into sharp contrast their differences, hence leading dominant groups to question others' loyalty as citizens. That process characterizes the polarization so evident in large parts of the MENA region today. Across, for example, North Africa from Tunisia to Egypt. In other parts, it has even led to a humanitarian crisis, the wounds of which will not be easy to heal. Those are my thoughts, frank and sincere thoughts, and I hope that they will also serve as a provocative prelude to the discussion to follow.